You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Hey there, folks, and welcome to episode number 168 of the Just Japan podcast, everything you want to know about Japan. My name's Kevin O'Shea. I am a Canadian who lives and works actually in Beijing, China. I've spent almost 10 years living in Kobe, Japan. Just got here to China not more than a few months ago, and I'm still podcasting about Japan. Of course, because hey, Japan rocks, Japan is awesome. It's episode 168, 3 weeks in a row, back at you. Got a great interview for you today. We're going to be talking with Dan in Japan. That's right, Dan, Japan Dan, the man behind the really awesome YouTube channel that we're going to talk about tonight. He's from the UK. He's been living in Japan for about a year and a half. I apologize for my voice cracking right there. What are you going to do? I am a teacher. I use my voice every day. It's the tool of my trade. And so I'm out doing a walk and talk like I have for the last few episodes. We're out here doing the thing, living in Beijing, working in Beijing, international school teacher, moved here with my family in August. And we're still waiting on the equipment to arrive, the recording gear. So I figured, again, for the third episode in a row, probably going to be a few more ahead of this. I'm out for a walk, recording this portion of the Just Japan podcast using my Edutige lavalier microphone with my fur windscreen. Oh, that was a big truck. A dead cat, and recording in my iPhone. So yeah, that's what I'm doing. Excuse me. So things have been going well with me. As far as updates go, working a lot. Just finished up coming off of a 1 week vacation. It was called Golden Week here in China. That's in October. Of course, there is also a Golden Week holiday in Japan, which happens near the end of April every year. So, we're doing good here. One of the things that's really interesting now that we live in a third country. So I'm from Canada. My wife is from Japan. My kids were born in Japan, raised in Japan up until this point, and now they go to an English international school. So, one of the things, and this would be a great topic for another episode where I've talked about raising bilingual children. When we were in Japan, English was obviously the second language of my children. They both went to Japanese school. Both kids went to Japanese kindergarten. My son graduated from Japanese kindergarten and started going to Japanese elementary school, Ichinensei. He was about 3 or 4 months into Ichinensei, which is first grade, when we moved here to China. And now they are in an English school where they also study Chinese, but it is an English international school. So what we've seen is like a tip, and we knew this was going to happen, but of languages, their L1 being Japanese, their L2 being English, but now we're seeing, for example, my daughter, who's only 4, it's kind of a flip. Her English is starting to become stronger than her Japanese. It happened very quickly. So we're doing a lot of things to try to connect us with the Japanese community here in Beijing. They've been to a big mat city at the Japanese International School here. We've been trying to get them to meet some Japanese kids. Now my son has a Japanese boy in his class who doesn't speak English. So the teacher often uses my son to help, with communication. So my son does have contact with, another Japanese kid during the day, but my daughter doesn't. There are no Japanese speakers in her class, so she doesn't have that luxury, I suppose. So we did find a native language course, they call it a mother tongue course, at another very big international school here in Beijing. And this Saturday coming up, So we've signed my son up for a spot, and it's basically a class that's set up for Japanese children who are living outside of Japan, who are in a situation like my son's. Maybe they're going to an English international school, or they don't have an opportunity to go to a Japanese school, to work on their reading and writing specifically, and to play cultural games and learn about the culture, sing songs and stuff. So my wife is going to take both of my kids up there on Saturday to this other international school. And so that's great. I hope they enjoy it. I hope it's all good. I try to play Japanese TV for the kids, stuff like Doraemon and different Japanese cartoons so they can hear it. When I was in Japan, I was always really pushing them to watch English television because I wanted them to hear English. Now that we're here, it's the opposite. I'm trying to get them to watch a lot of Japanese television to maintain their level of Japanese. But I mean, that's a struggle you go through no matter where you are in the world. If you are a parent of bilingual children, it's going to be a struggle to maintain the languages, to keep one up and this and that, and one will always be stronger than the other, and there you go. It's an interesting thing. So of course, guys, for you out there, if this is the first time you've listened to the Just Japan podcast, you can find all the show notes over at justjapanstuff.com. You can follow me on social media. I'm on Twitter, very active on Twitter, at JlandKev, the main kind of Japan stream. And then there's my teaching professional, if you want to know what I do as a teacher, at Mad for Maple. Mad for Maple. There will be links to those in the show notes at Just Japan Stuff. You can follow me on Instagram at JlandKev. We got a Facebook page it's just facebook.com/justjapanstuff. And people love to honk their horns here. And of course we have I've got a YouTube channel, guys. So check out youtube.com/BusanKevin. youtube.com/BusanKevin. And right now I am trying to cross a road here in Beijing, downtown. And if you've ever had the pleasure of coming to China, crossing a road in a big city in China is definitely an adventure and a half. Definitely taking your own life into your hands. You gotta, it's an adventure. I'll just say that. People do not stop for pedestrians. No, they don't. Apparently things have gotten a lot better than in the past, but believe me, people don't stop for pedestrians. Yeah. Okay, so this week of the podcast, by the way, there's also an email address. If you ever want to email me, justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. And of course, this podcast is available on all podcatchers, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio. We're all over the place, guys. So this week we're talking to Dan from the Dan in Japan channel on YouTube. There will be links in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com to his channel. Go check them out. And hey, my voice is already broken. I don't want to talk anymore. Let's get into the interview. Okay, folks, welcome to episode number 168 of the Just Japan podcast. And this evening we have a first-time guest. I'm very happy to have Dan from the Dan in Japan YouTube channel. Dan, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. I'm super excited to be here. It's going to be awesome.
Awesome. Great. Well, folks, I asked Dan to come on the Just Japan podcast. He is someone who popped up on my radar more than a year ago, I would say. I came across your videos because you're living the same area as me in Kobe, Japan.
Yeah.
Now, you don't live in Kobe, right? Or do you live in Kobe? Or do you?
I live in Akashi, which is like the next city over. But I spend most of my time in Kobe, so I love that place.
I have a connection because I worked in Akashi my first 5 years in Japan.
Yes. Nice. So, small world, right?
Yeah, I always lived in Kobe, the same place on Port Island, but I worked in Akashi for 5 years. And actually, it's something maybe get into later. I saw one of your recent update videos. You were walking right through the neighborhood I used to work in every day. So So I was like, oh my gosh, I know that place. I know that 7-Eleven. I know this and that. Okay, so
you start to feel super nostalgic, right?
Yeah. Well, I feel nostalgic for Akashi Park, but I love that place. That's wonderful.
Yeah, me too. Really, really good.
That's
good
really
for Pokemon too, by the way.
Yes, I've heard that. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't get to play Pokemon Go anymore.
Yeah. Okay, that's kind of bad. But
being in China, I can open it up, but there's nothing to see. Yeah.
It's like, oh, you can open it, but good luck.
I can open it and goof around with the stuff I already have in there, but yeah. Okay, so Dan, can you tell for the Just Japan podcast listeners out there, and for myself, because I mean this is the first time we've actually had an opportunity to chat. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what you do in Japan?
Yeah, sure. So, hello everyone. My name is Dan. I'm 33 years old as of this week,
Oh, happy
and I
birthday!
live in I live in Akashi right now, but I'm originally from England. Sheffield is a northern city, not famous for very much making steel. And I currently teach English at an Eikawa. So I'm doing the teaching thing, and in my spare time, I do the YouTube thing. So I make videos about stuff, basically.
All right, great. You make videos about Japan stuff. Um,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so for you folks out there listening, you're obviously, if you're listening to the Just Japan podcast, you're doing so because you're interested in Japan. So here is another a visual fix of Japan stuff for you. You go to Dan's YouTube channel, which is again, what is it called?
Jadan. So like I have a Japan, I have a Dan. Jadan, like
There we
the
go.
Pico title thing.
Exactly, Jadan. So go search for that and you will find it. And I will put links later on in all the show notes and stuff for this episode, of course. Okay, so how long have you been in Japan?
I've been in Japan about 18 months, give or take. So yeah, about a year and a half.
Okay, a year and a half. So you've been in Japan for a year and a half. And what made you decide to move to Japan? Were you one of these people who were, always really into Japanese culture, pop culture, or was it kind of a little more accidental?
I, it's like yes and no. There's like I was always kind of into whatever my little brother was into, and he was like into the manga and anime thing. So I kind of was on the fringe of that. I read a few books and stuff. I was also into video games when I was younger. I played a lot of Street Fighter. I still play a lot of Street Fighter these days. So I was always into that. And I liked J-punk a lot, like Japanese punk rock. So I always
Okay.
had an idea that I kind of liked certain aspects of the culture. But the biggest drive was like in England, my life was pretty boring. Like I had a job I didn't like and no real prospects for changing. So I was like, oh, a new challenge. So I decided to go do like a teaching qualification course. And of course, in England, they don't really need English teachers. So I kind of had to go somewhere else. And I think the combination of kind of liking the culture and needing to move kind of meant that, oh, that seems like a good choice.
Mm,
And I always really thought, ever since a young kid, I remember thinking I wanted to live abroad at some point. So
yeah.
everything kind of came together, and that's why I ended up here.
Nice. So I mean, it's sometimes you just need a big life change, right? Um,
Yeah, exactly that. Exactly that.
I suppose I mean it was a similar situation with me 4 years ago, not with Japan, but I moved to South Korea. Before I went to Japan, I lived in South Korea for several years,
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, I lived in Korea for about 5 years, and it was literally I had quite a good job in Canada, but kind of life was in a bit of a boring rut, and I'd always daydreamed of traveling, and I suppose when I was in university, a lot of my friends had more money than me, so they could afford to backpack around Europe and the UK and Ireland and stuff on the summers. Since they'd hop across the Atlantic from Eastern Canada, but I always had to work my butt off, basically. You know,
Exactly the
I
same.
I had to work like full-time jobs, a couple of jobs at a time, kind of thing, in order to pay for my tuition. So
Exactly.
there was no a lot of young Canadians have this kind of wanderlust, and they'll get like a working holiday visa and go to Ireland or again like the UK. Those are popular destinations and work in
Mhm.
pubs and hotels and things like that. And I always wanted to do that, but I just never had the chance. So I suppose for me too, heading to Asia was this satisfy that wanderlust.
Yeah, for sure. I feel exactly the same. Like in university, I grew up in a very working class area, to be honest. So didn't have the kind of means to just travel around whenever I felt like it. So I had to work hard, and then eventually, when the opportunity came, I was like, "Yo, I want to do this. This is the thing.
Mm.
Like, this is the chance." So yeah, I went for that.
Cool. Okay, so I want to talk about your YouTube channel.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I mean, you're a J vlogger, a YouTuber. So tell us about your channel. Why did you start it? And yeah, so let's get there. Why did you start a YouTube channel? Why did you decide you wanted to become a video blogger?
Well, it kind of happened by accident, to be honest. So when I first came here, I would make 30-second videos on my iPhone filming in portrait mode. That's how little I knew at
Oh
the time.
no,
Yeah, I know, I know,
no,
I know. You look back at the first
no.
videos, they're awful. But yeah, I was making little videos to kind of send to my family back home and be like, oh wow, they've got KFC here, and you know all the weird stuff that you do when you first get here. And I put them on YouTube, and then I just kept putting them on YouTube, and then I noticed that like other people were watching too, and I thought, okay, I'll just kind of keep making these. And the other aspect of it was that when I came here alone. I didn't know anybody. I knew nothing. I barely spoke Japanese, and the YouTube thing gave me a reason to go out and do things on my own. So I didn't just sit in my apartment. So that was kind of a big motivating factor. Like, oh, let's go look at this place. I can make a video about this thing. And eventually it grew to what it is today. So yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, definitely, doing, creating content can really motivate you to, again, to get off your keister and get outside and explore the world a lot more. When I had that opportunity a year and a half ago to become a Kobe PR ambassador, doing
Yes.
that PR thing for Kobe, like volunteering, but that motivated me to get out on the weekends and like to want to. I mean, I need to share stuff. I need to do things and share things with the world about Kobe. So I'd actually get out and I was much more active about going to festivals and finding out what was going on.
Exactly.
So I guess YouTube does that for you as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I mean, I'm in the same position again since I moved to China. Now that I'm here in Beijing, I've had a new motivation to start YouTubing again. And I was actually, when I finished this interview tonight with you, when I go back home, I plan to edit a video about a trip I made to Tiananmen Square 2 weeks ago.
Oh, I saw
Yeah.
some stuff on the Twitters, right? I saw some pictures and stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that. That should be great.
I was in that area again today with my family this time, and then I filmed a bunch of stuff in some hutongs, like the old traditional housing areas. It's kind of like it's like a labyrinth of old houses.
Wow.
I'm kind of getting backed up. So luckily I'm on a holiday right now here in China. It's a week-long holiday. Ironically enough, it's called Golden Week.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I'm going to be getting some content up there. But yeah, I know what you mean. Like even now, like I'm just like I live in kind of a pretty boring neighborhood, so there's nothing really interesting to see where I'm at. So I need to get out of here to film stuff that people want to see. You know.
And the other side of that coin is like you said, oh, it's a pretty boring area where you live. It's not that interesting. What I learned is it's not interesting to me. Doesn't necessarily mean it's not interesting to other people.
Well, yeah,
which is kind of a weird thing that I learned doing this.
that is true, and this is me maybe forgetting some of my YouTube roots when I make a comment like that, and I'm like, oh yeah, you're so right, because I mean, I suppose. I've been posting some kind of, I call them air quotes, classic videos on my Facebook page. Videos I made in the past, and some of the videos that people just love the absolute most, where I would just walk around like residential back streets in Japan. Like
100%.
Nothing flashy, not like Roppongi, not like Shinjuku, but literally like, this is where people live, and like check out the way they hang their laundry outside, and look at all those plants outside of their house, and look at this. Look at this shuttered tobacco shop that's not a shop anymore. And
exactly that.
And people
it's
love
crazy.
it.
Yeah, for sure. Like my most popular video is literally me walking around 7-Eleven with my smartphone, which drives me crazy because that's the video I put the least amount of effort into. But that's what people wanted to see. It's like it's the daily stuff. Like this, because everybody, I guess, makes videos about like Roppongi or something, right? Yeah. But it's the kind of everyday, like this is what it's really like on the ground that people really seem to be interested in. That's kind of interesting to me as well. Like I'd never guessed that before I did this. So that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, like for people maybe who are like new, for maybe younger people who are like new to Japan and they're partying and they're out there and they want to show the exciting things and the adventurous side of things. And, I get you there. I mean, there is definitely a cool factor to that. But I think the people who are true Japan fans and people who want to come here may not have the opportunity or are working on it. They want to see like what is it like, and what is it like for real Japanese people? Where do they live? What do they really do? What do they really buy in a real store?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I mean, I get that appeal. I definitely get that appeal. Okay, so on your channel now, roughly how many videos would you say you have?
I've been doing at least 2 a week since I got here, so I'm about. Probably about 165, 170 videos, somewhere in that range. So yeah, hit and miss
Okay.
sometimes, but there's a lot of stuff up there. So
Yeah, that's the way it is. But I mean, the more content you have, the easier it is for people to find you, and more discoverability. Um,
that's it.
so what are some of the videos for you that are the most memorable? Some of your favorite videos that maybe ones that number. Okay, let's divide it into two categories. What are some of the videos that you've worked the hardest on, or the proudest of, and what are some videos that maybe you've already mentioned one that kind of surprised you with success?
Yeah, okay, cool. So, a couple of my favorite videos are generally the ones where I go to a new place with some people.
Hmm.
Like, I had a couple of friends come to visit from England, Sid and Nat, and we just had like 2 weeks of just going to new places and making a video every day. And just some of the little interactions, and like, we're all looking at this stuff for the first time. That's really fun to do.
Mm.
The video I'm probably proudest of is when I first got here. I look back and it's kind of cringy now, but it's kind of a good concept. Is I made like an parody MTV Cribs of my one bedroom, tiny little Japanese apartment.
Mm.
And it's so sarcastic, and the video production is like terrible, but it's kind of on purpose. And I just thought that was really funny.
Mm.
It didn't really get as much traction as I was kind of hoping back in the day when I didn't really know how things work, but I still watch that video sometimes and I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny. And the other side of the coin, like the surprising ones, was the 7-Eleven thing really surprised me.
Mm.
I was a bit shocked by that one. Um, and I heard one video where some friends sort of challenged me to eat Japanese snacks, like, I don't know, like chocolate or potato chips or whatever.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought, oh, this is not going to be that interesting, but it turned out really funny, and that was kind of cool. So that was the ones that before I made it, I didn't think it would work, and then it kind of worked. So I like that.
Nice, nice. Yeah, sometimes they really surprise you, and one of the YouTube is such a unpredictable beast where it might be a video that you think is amazing, you put a lot of work into, and like it gets no views, and then literally
Hmm.
something like you said, like you just pull out your smartphone and there's no editing required at all or involved, and then boom, big time.
Exactly that. And
Yeah.
it's just a gamble every time you upload something. Is this going to be the one? Is this going to get ignored? I don't know. That's half the fun, I think.
And sometimes, to be honest, sometimes they're creepers. Like sometimes
Hmm.
you'll put it up there, and that video might be sitting there for a long time with very little action, and then one day something happens. I've had that happen to me before too.
Hmm.
I've had a video go viral 2 years after I posted it.
That's pretty interesting because sometimes you kind of forget the past and you're like, okay, well, that didn't work. I'll just leave it. And then you go back to it 6 months later. You're like, whoa, that actually had quite a lot of views. It kind of grew as time went.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like
exactly. And then it's always kind of
especially stuff like,
fun.
sorry,
Oh no, I was going
I
to
was
say
gonna say,
it's kind of fun to sleuth through your analytics and sometimes figure out where did that happen. Sometimes you'd find like your video got featured on some kind of really big Japanese blog or something like that. And you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
yeah, it's nice to know where the traffic comes from sometimes. I'm always really entertained trying to see like the demographic of where people are watching from.
Mm,
Because like I made this just for people back in England when I started. And now it's kind of funny to see like some of the places where people are watching from. Like, how did they even find this? Like, how did this even get there? So yeah,
yeah.
I love the analytics side of it too. It's kind of cool.
I enjoy that with this podcast. I enjoy sitting down with so I use Libsyn as my podcasting host service, and they've got really good analytics. And I know, of course, that the biggest audience are people in America, in the United States, and that makes sense, just due to numbers. And
Yeah.
believe it or not, the second largest audience is Japan.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
yeah, so there's a lot of people, a lot of foreigners, and even Japanese people in Japan listening to this podcast. And thank you all of you
Huh.
guys. But I mean, I can remember at one point, like when I was probably in the mid 20s of episodes, for whatever reason, this podcast was becoming popular in Uruguay, and
Exactly. Like,
and I was
how did
just like,
that
what?
happen?
And it happened for about 5 or 6 episodes. It was just like there were like hundreds and hundreds of downloads from Uruguay, and then it just kind of stopped. So it was like, wonder what
What
happened there.
happened?
What happened there? I don't know what happened. It's really cool that it did, though.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's nice to know these things, but trying to explain these things is like a different thing altogether. So
Yeah,
sometimes it's nice to know the information, I think.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, so I'm curious, just with regards to a few videos, you recently had a chance to go up into the Akashi Kaikyo Bridge, didn't you?
Yes, that was amazing. That
Can
was
you?
actually one of my like all-time favorite things in
I
Japan so far.
I will never ever 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 have any desire to do that. I am scared to death of heights,
Ah,
and
I see.
just like no way. And I remember when I became a Kobe Peer ambassador, they were like, "Hey, you have maybe have a chance to go up into the Akashi Bridge." I'm like, "Nope, not me. Find someone else, guys." Yeah, but so
Yeah.
tell us about that experience.
Oh, that was really cool. I love that bridge ever since I got here. And I remember the first day I was coming from like Kicks to Akashi, and I remember seeing it off the train and just thinking like, wow, that's awesome. And random side note is the bridge was based on a bridge that's about an hour from my hometown.
Oh, really?
So that came up in the little, before you go on the bridge, you go around the museum, and there was the bridge from like near my hometown. I was like, oh, that's kind of full circle how that works. That was kind of cool. But the bridge itself, like, there was a new coworker that came to live in Akashi, and she wanted to go. I was like, okay, I've been waiting for an excuse to go. Let's go. So we went for the day. We did the little tour, walked across the bridge, and then I think it's about 300 meters up in the air to the little viewing platform. And it was like awesome. That view of all like Kobe, and the other side, you've got like Awajishima. It was just amazing. Like, I've never been good with heights, but since I came to Japan, I was like, yo, you're gonna have to get used to some heights. And I really challenged for that one, and I really enjoyed that one. So yeah, just remember being stood up there and just seeing everything and being like, wow, look at that. Coming from a kind of ruralish area where I grew up,
Hmm.
and never being above the fourth floor of a building, going out there was kind of cool. It's a bit of a complete Jekyll and Hyde to my regular life, I think.
Yeah, wow. And for those of you that are listening who may not be familiar with the Akashi Bridge, it is the world's longest suspension bridge. So it's a big one, and
Yeah, it's big.
better you had the experience than me. Um,
Well, I'm glad I could share it with you. I mean,
well,
even
yeah,
some
yeah.
of the scenes, I was hanging the camera over the edge, and like when I was editing it, I was like, "Whoa, that kind of makes me feel a bit sick." So
Yeah.
it's kind of funny.
Oh, yeah. I can actually get acrophobic just by watching videos sometimes. So, but hey,
Oh, I apologize for that.
yeah, cool, man. Well, okay. So, I mean, I sent you a couple of talking points before before the interview, and one thing I mentioned was that you're relatively new to Japan, but maybe that's compared to the 10 years that I spent there. But you've been in Japan for about a year and a half, and
Yeah.
I'm curious when you first arrived to Japan, and I know a lot of you guys out there listening to this episode who haven't been to Japan yet, but want to get to Japan to work or to travel would be curious about. What were some of the things that surprised you the most when you first arrived in Japan?
So when I came here, I still felt I was kind of a blank page, right? I didn't have that many preconceptions about what it was going to be like. But one of the things that really surprised me was toilets. Like in a weird way, like the washlets and the high tech side of things like that, really threw me because I was like, whoa, I didn't expect this. Um, and Japan has this weird way of balancing super modern and super traditional in lots of different aspects of its culture. Like you go to SoftBank and there's Pepper the robot, and then they still send faxes. So they do this kind of really advanced and really kind of traditional. And this is kind of in the toilets too, right? You've got the washlets, then you've also got the squat toilets, and it's always a mixed bag. Like, which one are you going to get?
Yeah,
So that was a bit shocking
are you
at
gonna get
first.
the high tech digital control panel on your heated seat toilet, or do you get the hole in the floor?
Exactly that. And just having that kind of quandary where you're like, I wonder which one it's going to be is not something that I ever really gave much thought to, but it's kind of surprising when I got here. Another big thing for me was the trains because, they're like good. So I come from
Yeah.
England where the trains are awful. They're never on time. In London, they're kind of okay, and the underground's kind of cool in London. But outside of that, they're just an absolute shambles. So
Oh, really?
coming here, and trains were actually like on time and like reasonably priced, and not like a rubbish bin on wheels. It was kind of cool to see that. That was really good. And is there anything else? Oh, vending machines everywhere. Like vending machines everywhere, which was a bit of a strange one. We have vending machines in England, of course, but they're usually smashed up. So that was a bit of a strange one too.
Yeah, yeah, no, I mean, I definitely miss all the ubiquitous vending machines because I mean, there are some here in Beijing, but nothing like there. I mean, that's just so convenient, and that's one of the things that when you leave when you leave Japan, you realize all these like little things that you start to really miss, like, oh, why I can't get a drink here? I'm so
Yeah.
thirsty.
I'm really
What do you mean
thirsty.
there's not a vending machine like 2 yards away?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. It's like, well, what kind of drink do I want? I've got 30 vending machines within a 2 minute walk of 2 minute radius. What do I get? Do I want the hot coffee? Do I want the soup, the onion soup, or the miso soup,
the corn soup.
the
When I
corn
first
soup?
saw that, I was so confused. Like, wow, hot corn soup from the vending machine. Never thought I'd see the day.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty amazing, huh? Um, yeah, good old Japan. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
you never cease to
definitely
amaze
has some
us.
experiences. Yeah, for sure. Like some stuff you just kind of, wow, I never. And this is where like I hear the term "because Japan" like a lot to explain why things are the way they are. It's like, oh, why is there like a million vending machines? Because Japan. Oh yeah, okay, cool, I got it.
Yep, just the way it is. Don't question
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't question it. Don't try to understand it. Just it's there. Get used to it. And in the case of the vending machines, that's so useful that you're very happy to have it. Okay, I'm curious. Obviously you're working in Japan. You're teaching in Japan. Was there anything about work life in Japan that caught you off guard? I know I've had a lot of head scratching experiences over my years of teaching in a few countries, but definitely I had them when I first moved to Japan as well. Did you have any head scratching moments?
There was a couple of odd moments, which just kind of me misunderstanding the culture, right? Like the way that people interact with each other in companies. Like when I was dealing with like students, no problem, and members of other teachers, no problem, members of staff, no problem. But then when the higher ups would come in, and like just little things like once I got a complaint because I greeted the person as they came in the door when they didn't want to be greeted or something like this, and I was super confused about it. But then I kind of thought about it more, and it's like it's just me not understanding kind of the situation and the way things work here. So a few times I've made mistakes around that kind of thing. But working for an Eikaiwa is a little different, I think. We don't do the super hard kind of salaryman working hours or anything like that.
Hmm.
But we definitely have its own challenges. When a student comes and they take a lesson and they do that one lesson and then they come back next week, right?
Hmm.
When you're doing like 45 lessons a week with the same textbooks, you definitely start to get deja vu a lot.
Oh yeah,
When
yeah.
you know what somebody's going to say before they say it and things like this. So, which is really useful actually, because now a lot of the time in a lesson, I'm like, I already know what they're going to ask before they ask me, which is really useful. But then I can feel like I'm some kind of psychic or something and try and freak them out a little bit, which is kind of fun. Keeps the day interesting, I think. So,
The first few lessons of the day aren't so good, but as the day goes on, you get more and more polished, right?
yeah, for sure. Definitely that.
I can remember having like, for example, like I think my first year. I mean, I just finished teachers college in Canada, where it was just drilled into us that like you never touch a child, you never touch a child, you don't hug a child, you don't put your hand on a child, you just stay away from children.
Yeah.
Like that's
Literally, try not to be in the same room if you can help it.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
basically.
keep a barrier.
You teach you're in the hallway. They're all in the classroom. You have the door open,
Exactly.
and you project into the classroom.
Yeah.
So I can remember, within my first few weeks of teaching in Japan, of having a complaint about me where a kid went home and complained that Mr. O'Shea wouldn't hug them,
Yeah.
and I wasn't hugging them enough, and I wouldn't hug the kids, and then basically like my manager had a meeting with me, and then I learned about the term skinship, which basically means like in Japan there's physical contact and there's nothing like sketchy about it or creepy about it. It's just like adults and kids hug a lot, and kids expect their teachers to hug them and rough house with them a lot and this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I'm coming from a culture where, especially as a trained teacher, you're trained definitely not to do that for fear
Exactly.
of your own career and your own safety, because
Exactly.
you don't want some kid accusing you of something you didn't do. And
And
then
you don't have the backup to get out of it if you have actually been doing that. Like coming from England, we've got a very big social kind of issue with touching kids. Well, I'm going to rephrase that. Being in contact with kids
yeah.
because the history and the stuff, and it's just not something that's done in that culture.
Yeah.
And I came here and I was having problems with a 3-year-old kid because he just wouldn't do anything. And the teacher was like, well, "Why don't you just sit him on your knee?" And my brain was like
What?
exploding. Like, are you for real? Like, no way. But now I do that. Like I've changed a lot. Like, okay, cool. And
Oh
then
yeah,
wrestling the kids and stuff. So yeah, after learning that it's kind of acceptable, it makes a
yeah.
lot of sense. But at first that was a big one for me to get over. That was a hurdle that I really struggled with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and I definitely changed my teaching style a lot too to kind of accommodate for that. But I mean, like,
Hmm.
obviously now I've left Japan and I'm not teaching that environment anymore, so I've had to change my style again to accommodate my
Yeah.
new situation. So now, like, when kids are kind of like getting too close and too huggy, it's kind of like you kind of do the slow push away. That's okay now.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
that's okay. Give me some space. I like
So I think
I like you too, but just don't touch me.
yeah, horses for courses, right? You got to really adapt to whatever the situation you're in, which is, hallmarks of a good teacher like yourself. Like you can adapt to a new situation, then it's going to be awesome. But if you get stuck in your ways and you can't change, that's when you're really going to have trouble, I think. You've got to be super flexible.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's like that way, right? When you move into a new culture, you have to be very open-minded and willing to for yourself to change. Don't expect them to change for you.
Yes, 100%.
But
Like when I came here, I changed a lot just because I was like, wow, things are different here. Like I'm going to have to kind of fit in.
yeah,
One example is the way I'm speaking. Like where I'm from in England, it's got a really, really thick accent. Even other people from England sometimes struggle to understand. So I came here and spoke like this, and other teachers from Australia and England kind of didn't understand what I was talking about. So I had to like make a teacher voice so people could actually understand what you were talking about. So that was a weird one as well when I came here, having to change the way I speak. That was interesting.
yeah, I know, absolutely. It's something you have to do as a teacher. It's
For
something
sure.
you have to do as a even like a YouTuber or a podcaster.
Hmm.
If you want, I've had people before, Japanese people, who've told me that they listen to this podcast in order to like help study English and learn English and improve their listening skills.
That's
So
great.
I don't want to be too fast. I want to have a decent tone and pace, I guess, that kind
Hmm.
of thing. Okay, so with regards to living in Japan, you live in the Kansai region.
Hmm.
2 weeks ago I had Tom on from the Being Kansai Twitter feed, which is a great source of info.
Yes.
You're living in Akashi, and you spend a lot of time in Kobe. How do you really like living in the area? Do you wish you were in the bright lights and big city of Tokyo or anything like that, or are you content with where you're at?
Oh, I love Kansai. Like when I was moving to Japan, the company I'm working with gave me the choice of Hokkaido, Kanto, or Kansai, right?
Okay.
And I didn't like the idea of Tokyo. It's like too much. Like everything's there's too big. There's too much. It's too many. It's too expensive. So and Hokkaido, like I thought about it, but it's a bit far out of the way from the experience I thought I wanted. So I just kind of chose Kansai as like, oh, I guess Kansai is going to work. That'll do. And I'd heard of Osaka before I came here. So I was like, yeah, cool. I want to see Osaka. That seems cool. And now I came here, like in 18 months, I definitely feel like I've become Kansai-jin, right? Like when I go to other cities, like if I go to Tokyo or something, and
Mhm.
I'm on the Shinkansen back, I get that little feeling when you start to get close to Kansai, like, yes, I'm going home. This is where I live. This is the place. So yeah, I really, really love Kansai a lot. Like Kobe, Sama specifically, is probably my favorite place in the world, probably. Like I love that place so much.
Mm,
It's really,
cool.
really awesome.
Cool. I totally get you, man. Like we're my family and I for their winter holiday. I keep saying to people,
Mm.
yeah, we're going home for the winter holiday, and actually we're going to Kobe.
Yeah.
So we're going to spend a week and a half in Kobe. So it's like, yeah, I'm gonna go head home. But it definitely feels like that. So I'm really excited to spend some time in Kobe this December and January.
Yeah,
Um,
of course, man. That's gonna be great.
It's going to be awesome. And for those of you out there who are listening, who may be in the area, I'm probably going to do a second annual meetup, Just Japan podcast meetup in Kobe. So stay tuned for more information about that. Um,
I'll try to get down to that, of course.
yeah, we
I
had
should be
a
around that time. So yeah,
cool,
nice.
cool. Yeah, we had last year we met up at the Harvard Tavern, the former
Oh,
Hobgoblin.
Harvard Tavern.
Yep,
Yes. Simon, right? The guy that runs it. He's cool.
yeah, it was a good time. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, okay, you're a YouTuber. You're making the videos on the YouTubes. Um,
That's correct.
for those out there who are sitting in their house in America, in Australia, in the UK, or they're out for a walk in New Zealand or wherever it may be where they're listening to this
Oh,
episode,
Uruguay.
or apparently in Uruguay doing whatever it is they do.
Yeah,
And I appreciate the patronage, folks, of
of
Uruguay.
course.
What's some advice you give to anyone out there who is thinking of setting up a YouTube channel? People who are just like, oh, you know what, maybe I just arrived in Japan, or I'm going to be heading there. I'm going to be a new jet, or this or that. I'm going to start a YouTube channel to share my experiences. What's some beginner advice you'd give to them?
Okay, cool. Like the biggest things that I learned from literally, like I said, shooting portrait mode and just uploading
Ah,
direct to YouTube to where I am now is like planning. Planning is the biggest part of it. Like making a video is not just as simple as pointing a camera at something. You've got to have like a narrative almost. There's got to be like a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's got to have some sort of purpose. So kind of planning a video a little before you shoot it is really useful. And the stuff that comes after it is just as important that people don't think about, like the tagging, putting subtitles on stuff, thumbnails, social media, the cards, like answering comments and stuff like that is just as important as having a cool video. If you have a cool video with no tags and no thumbnail or something, it's going to do nothing. So you've got to think about that stuff too. If you are making a channel, my advice to you is get ahead. Like film maybe 8 to 10 videos and upload them, but don't publish them straight away. And then you can kind of schedule them while you work on the next batch. And that way you can be consistent. YouTube really kind of favors channels that are consistent, like 2 or 3 a week. And it's hard to do that when you're juggling your regular life and stuff. So yeah, kind of get in front before you start, and then you can fill the backlog and keep up about 10 in advance a lot of the time. That really helps. And the most important thing with a new channel, I think, is interact with everyone that goes near your channel. If somebody leaves you a comment, reply. If somebody follows you on Twitter, give them a thanks. Like building the community is much more important than making a viral video or something like that, I think. So that's what I think about the whole situation anyway.
oh, absolutely. I'll definitely concur with that. Like, building your community is very key. For example, like all the awesome folks out there, you guys listening right now. Um, it's you want to keep in contact with them on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Make a Facebook page for your channel. Um, Post stuff, not just your channel, not just a link to each video you make, but post other things. Contact. I've been a bit. How shall I say? I need to get a bit better with interacting with people on Facebook. I used to be really good at it when I was in Japan, but since I've made the move to China, I'm posting.
Not so easy.
I'm posting news links. It's not. It's actually pretty easy when you're running VPNs. It's all about the VPNs, right?
Oh, okay.
It's all about VPNs. So I mean, I've got full access. I had quite a few challenges actually with my podcast hosting service and my WordPress pages. So justjapanstuff.com.
Really?
Yeah, justjapanstuff.com is a WordPress page. BoostOnKevin.com is a WordPress page, and I couldn't get them to work, even with a VPN. So what I had to do was actually run a double VPN. And for whatever reason, when I run 2 VPNs at the same time, I can use both pages and upload my podcast.
Yeah, because it's something that you probably didn't expect. Well, I mean, it's kind of a well-known thing, but you probably didn't expect it to be so difficult. So, I mean, people like yourself who've got a bit of technical knowledge, you think, oh, I can find a way around this. It'll not be too hard. And sometimes you come into those like roadblocks. You're like, I didn't foresee this one coming. I don't know what to do. Like,
yeah, well, I mean,
I definitely have that sometimes.
Yeah. No. I mean, I definitely was prepared. I mean, I came to China with I came with a couple of computers. My wife and I are iPhones, and I had like 3 paid nice VPNs on each one. And I'm the kind of person, like, in case this one doesn't work, I have this one. And it's true.
Yeah.
That'll happen. You'll literally be out and you'll turn on one VPN and you can't seem to access things. So you turn it off. You turn off the other VPN, and boom, you can get onto things. But I mean, I got to admit though, I do enjoy the challenges sometimes, like troubleshooting. But
it's fun, right?
It can be bloody frustrating at times though, when you're just like, oh my gosh, like to just post
Like,
this.
why won't you work?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess that's really, it's one of the frustrations of being where I'm at. But obviously, for those of you guys out there listening, the podcast is back out again. I've been posting on YouTube fairly regularly. So there's ways around things, right?
There's always a way. There's always a way.
There's always a way. Okay, I'm curious. Before you came to Japan, were you watching any J-vloggers, Japan vloggers? Were there any people you were following to learn about things in Japan?
So in between the time of like actually deciding to come to Japan and getting here, I had to wait maybe 6 months for like visas and stuff to be processed. It took a while. So I thought in this time, I'd try and study a bit of Japanese. And I basically studied online using YouTube. So I'd study videos and stuff and try and learn that way, which was kind of cool, actually. So I did a bit of that. There's an English dude who's very kind of popular J vlogger abroad in Japan, Chris Broad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I watched a lot of his videos before I came to Japan. He was the one that came up when I searched like English dude in Japan or whatever. And Victor, the Give Me a Break, Give Me a Break man. I watched kind of some of his stuff too. He's got definitely a different style. So they were guys I watched before I came here. And then since I got here, of course, being in the J vlogger community or whatever you want to call it, I've found so many cool channels. Like I found yourself, like Higgins, who's on your podcast a lot.
Yeah.
Guy Gillionaire, who makes some awesome kind of culture, especially like video game culture videos. Critical Eats Japan. He's got an awesome channel just trying cool food. He was one of the guys that got me going. Like when I first started, he gave me a shout out on one of his videos, and that's what kind of drove a lot of the traffic to get me going in a way.
Oh, nice.
So I owe a lot to that guy. Yeah.
He's been on the podcast before.
Has he?
Yeah.
I heard that one.
Gosh, what episode is it? Maybe 10 episodes, 10 or 15 episodes ago, 10 episodes ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, there was an episode.
Yeah, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, it is called Critical Eats Japan. So
yes, he's a really awesome guy. Like he's so down to earth, and I'm really looking forward to meeting him. Like I'm going to go to Tokyo later this year just to kind of meet those guys. Cool. Specifically going just to go and meet those guys and see like what's going on. So.
Oh, absolutely, man. Like I definitely, in my early years in Japan and YouTube, I mean, I used to host meetups and go to meetups and made some of my best friends, my best friends in Japan, just best friends, period, through YouTube. So I definitely will always, say, go to those meetups, go meet people, hook up, do your own meetup,
Yeah, for sure. Like meeting people is half of the fun. Like I've met a couple of really awesome people while they were living in Japan. Like a close friend of mine, Alexei himself, he now lives back in Finland. But while he was here, he was studying on Port Island, and we used to hook up and make videos a lot. And I'm still close with him now. We still talk a lot. And yeah. So like meeting people through doing the YouTube thing is kind of weird, but it's also awesome. So yeah, it's really, really cool way to meet people.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. Well, you know what? I don't want to keep you up much later. You're an hour ahead of me.
That's cool.
You're an hour ahead of me time zone wise, and I got to do some video editing and whatnot.
No worries.
So if people out there want to find your YouTube channel, they want to find you on social media, where can they do that? Okay,
so it's www.jadan.co.uk. That'll take you straight to the YouTube. On the YouTube, they've got all the social media accounts, but on Twitter, which is the one I use the most, it's Jadan_Dan. I'd love to hear from you. That'd be awesome. And yeah, please check it out.
Cool. Now, guys, you folks out there listening to the podcast, this episode, all of the links that have been mentioned will all be in the show notes for episode 168 at justjapanstuff.com. So go there, check it out. And Dan, I want to thank you for joining us on the podcast tonight. It's been really awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I've been following your stuff for a while, so it's been really awesome to be part of it. Thanks a lot.
Please hang up and try again.
All right. Well, I want to thank Dan for taking the time to come on the Just Japan podcast and talk about his life in Japan, his life in the Kansai area, his adventures in Akashi and Kobe, and his YouTube channel. So, of course, you can go check him out on YouTube. I'll put the link in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com. Go check him out on Twitter at Dan, I think. Again, that link will also be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com under episode 168. Well, that's awesome, guys. I always love meeting new people, chatting with new people on the Just Japan podcast. It's one of the things that the podcast has brought me so much happiness over the years is because I get to share some awesome stories with you guys out there. You get to meet some really awesome people too, and I get to meet them too, as well. So I'll be selfish here, guys. So of course, hey, you guys can help the Just Japan podcast get bigger by spreading the word. Okay. If you like this podcast, please share it on your Twitter feed, share it on your Facebook feed, share it all over the place on your social media. Go like the Facebook page, facebook.com/justjapanstuff. When I post up there, please share it, guys. That helps the show get bigger. when I post that a new episode is out. Go share it. If I tweet that a new episode is out, please share it. Retweet it. That makes it, more people follow the show, find the show, be attracted to the show. It's a good situation. It's win-win. More people come to listen to it, and you get more stuff to listen to. Yeah. Of course, like I mentioned, you can find the Just Japan podcast on all the major podcatchers. I'm even posting episodes on YouTube now, so you can listen to it on YouTube. If you, there's no video. Essentially, it's just a static image of the Just Japan podcast logo, but you walk around the house and listen to it. While you do your housework, while you wash the dishes, do your chores, while you study, do some work, whatever it may be. So so there goes another episode of the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan, episode 168. My pleasure, as always, to bring it to you. You guys are very awesome. Thank you so much for supporting the show. Of course, you can always go over to iTunes if you're new to the show and give us a rating. That helps the show. Spread the love, spread the word. The Just Japan podcast. All right, guys, my name's Kevin O'Shea. You can find me on Twitter at JLandKev, at MadForMaple. You can find me on Facebook at Just Japan Stuff, on Instagram at JLandKev. And if you want to email me any questions about Japan, about Korea, because I lived there for 5 years as well, or China, I'll probably have trouble answering those because I'm brand new here. Shoot me an email at justjapanpodcast@gmail.com. All right, guys, that does it for this week. So wherever you are in the world, hope you're happy, hope you're healthy, and I'll be talking to you real soon.
Bye.